All right, I have some time while I'm waiting this temperature to rise. Hanukkah story. So it's a family, and they're religious, meaning it's not like Bar Kokhba revolt where the guy is secular. He just wants to get the Romans out of Judea. Like Ariel Sharon, for example, he would be like a Bar Kokhba. He's a bulldozer. He knows how to handle the terrorists. He would do it in a way that was, he would maybe violate some human rights, but he didn't care, and he was that type. He was very tough, and he would like bulldoze a whole town. If a terrorist came out of one town, he would like get the whole town. Whatever it was, he was a strong guy, but he was secular. His mother wasn't even a Yid according to halacha. His mother Veda was a Judaized Christian, like they would keep the seventh day. So they immigrated to Israel. She married a Jew. But he was, in every sense of the word, he was secular, Ariel Sharon. So then you have Judah Maccabee, which was, he was like also politically motivated. He liked power, whatever he wanted, but he was religious in the sense that he said, whoever is for God, come with me. He probably meant the God of his choice, the God of his imagination, the God that agrees with him. Just like ISIS, when they say Allah, they're not talking about, they didn't check with Jesus and with the Gemara and the Jewish sages about their operation, because ISIS is a very direct, literal interpretation of the Quran. But the rabbis would say, look, you have to do it this. You need to, before you throw someone over a building, you need 70 judges. And we don't do it bisman hazeh. All these concepts. Oh, it's really hot in here. Sorry. So here's the context. Here's the point here. What type of guy was Judah Maccabee, right? So the war, it really doesn't matter if it's religious or secular. It's people that want control. It doesn't mean they hate foreigners. People like foreigners. Foreigners bring other types of things. King Solomon loved foreigners. When he was shtupping the Queen of Sheba, he wanted to get into the spice trade. So he wanted to, there was a road, I think she came from Ethiopia. There might be some controversy where she was from and who she was, but the story is that she was a queen. It was what would an Orthodox boy think of that today? Could a queen be chosen by God or her God? So they came from a society which accepted women in power. It's like the Rebbe with some great chief reform rabbi, which you don't have that today because religion right now is not so important to people's lives. But if it was, you would have, just like you have a great woman scientist, you would have a great a woman chief rabbi of like Great Britain or America or something like that, So more than just ceremonially, but because we don't have the equivalent of kings, prophets, and priests. So back to Judah Maccabee, he's a priest, right? So who loved him and who hated him? So there were people who fought for him in his army, and they had pagan amulets hanging on their... he found them, the dead bodies in the battlefield with pagan amulets. He was very angry because he wanted to believe in one God and his God. And he didn't like the Roman... it was very offensive to the Hebrews or the people, the Jews in Judea at the time. The images on the flags that the Romans had when they would march into town, But they didn't always come to make fights. Sometimes they were, client states. This is like America and Israel. Israel is like a client state to America in a way, like with Trump and the embassy. You know what I mean? So, and Haredis today, not that, there are big groups, but you don't find that many that are fighting Trump, as in being, he's clearly a Tzioni and he's clearly secular, but they kind of shoehorn it to fit, a guy with long payas and he votes for Trump and he thinks Trump is Mashiach that happened to be born a guy, so he has to be Megayer so everything could work out, So anyway, Judah Maccabee has, here's the priestly family in Judea, right? Who hates them? Let's make a list of their friends and their enemies within the Jewish people. So there are people who think that they should be the priestly family chosen by God, right? And how does that work? Because of communication problems, you just do it, and then the next generation thinks that God chose you. You just you take power. So so there are people who are religious that hate Judah Maccabee, and there are people who are secular. They don't like him telling them what to eat and when to and how to keep Shabbos and whether they could travel on the Shabbos or stuff like that. So what type of enemies does he have? He has both secular and religious. So the religious enemies, they think that they're holier than him. So they live in the caves. They're separatists, they're very frum, like these briskers. And if you see in the Dead Sea Scrolls writings, you see how they write about the Kohen Gadol, Kohen Harasha. So for them, the whole Beis HaMikdash is Tameh, not because of the Greeks and the oils and defiled oils like the classical stories you tell in the Hanukkah house in modern cities, but they believe that the Kohanim themselves, Yehuda Maccabee himself, is a motherfucker and he's Tameh and he should go, and only when the apocalyptic, when God will come down to earth and make the good guys win. That's all these apocalyptic stories, eschatological writings, right? The Christians have the Rapture, where God will save only the believing Christians. And if you didn't believe, you're going to go into a lake of the whole world's going to be like in a big fire. Read about that. It's very funny, the Rapture. And this is how believers who feel special develop their imagination around them being special. And the God of the universe is the God that they imagined in their childhood confirmation class, in Sunday school. So Yehuda Maccabee has religious enemies and secular, and everyone in between who don't want him. So where does he get his power from? So he gets his power from the regular farmers who bring money, oxen, a dove, or little fruits to the temple to donate to the gods, or the God, the Jewish God, because they went from polytheism to monotheism. They started cutting down on the amount of gods that they worshipped, and they went to one God, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. They stopped worshipping Baal. Baal means any generic god from any town. If you're traveling in Judea or the north or the east, the south, whatever people believed then, there were so many different tribes. So then a lot of animosities going on there, but then sometimes groups unite, for example, the Hasidim and Misnagdim were uniting against the Maskilim in Russia because they had a common cause. They figured it out, Obviously, the simple-minded don't know how to figure it out and they don't know how to unite, but usually the Rebbes, who are more sophisticated and have more freedom to make choices, could do something with a common goal. So what does it mean today? It's an interesting story. The more you know the history, the more you can apply it to today and all the details. And there's lots of details about this, the groups. And I don't know if they had a Torah yet. If the Torah was completed then, and when Yehuda Maccabee was around. So what were they arguing about? Which books should be in the canon? Because the Ecclesiastes, Koheles and Shirashirim was very erotic. Koheles is apikarsis style. It tells you that prayer doesn't really do much and there's no afterlife, and to be happy with the ones you love, live good. It's funny, at the end of Koheles it says like fear God and do his commandments. It must have been added in order for the book to be added into the Hebrew canon by the rabbis, but the book itself has lots of issues. Then Eve is a story about God making a bet with Satan, so it's really it contradicts and leaves a lot of questions for people who want to believe that God is good, and he wouldn't go and torture someone for just because he made a bet with Satan, right? How could he do that? And then comes the issue of I gotta lower the phone now because it's really hot in here. So the temperature is lower here on the floor. I'm sitting on the floor. So then you got, so then he makes a bet with Satan. So then people could believe that the story of Eve is fictional, right? Because it's a mashal. So if it's a mashal of God speaking to the devil and the angels, so then maybe the story of Moshe going up to get the Torah and God speaking to angels, maybe that's a mashal because it's written in the same style. So therefore, believers are forced to by their imagination to believe that it's historic. So you have a lot of people believing that's historic, and then it poses a problem again. So it's not a mashal, so God is really this type of guy that could strike a deal with Satan and torture an innocent person. So, and then goes back to the story of the Maccabees. What did they want? So Yehuda Maccabee said, look, there's a temple, I'm in charge, and God wants these foreign guys out of the land, intermarriage and all those problems. It's funny how the Hebrew God, the image of the Hebrew God from then to now changed not only through the generations, but it actually, in one classical student that goes to Jewish day school or to ultra-Orthodox, he has so many images of God as this infinite guy that no one understands, and then it's a guy that gets angry, and it doesn't literally mean angry, and he doesn't pick up what the philosophers are saying and what the mystics are saying, and it turns into a whole big salad. So, and walking out, one thing is certain, that the boy walks out confused. So what's the Hanukkah story? So some people, they have a tendency to pick up the story, something that they liked. And one guy in shul, an older man, he liked the story that there was Jews against Jews, that they were not fighting these foreign, and it's true that the animosity between the Jews was much greater than that of the Romans. If you look in the Dead Sea Scrolls, their issue was much more with other Jewish groups who they considered their enemy because they were closer to them in nature. So what's worse, like for a Litvisha boy who's very frum, is a Lubavitcher Meshachist boy like a real threat to him more than a Reform rabbi that's a woman, or maybe a modern Orthodox that's in Yeshiva University that considers himself Orthodox and goes by every heter possible, and he still comes back to shul and he tones a fine line? Or is the Briske boy or any Litvish Amir boy in the yeshiva even more angry, like a boy Avremi in LA? Avremi is, he always puts up a frum face, but deep down he likes the life of leisure, and he likes to get around, and he likes to, and he's happy that he doesn't have to have a beard because he has a full-on heter to shave out of Shabbos. It's even a mitzvah by him. So, and even if he did have a beard, it wouldn't stop it, because he just would look like a hipster. But he looks like a proper guy, like in a suit. He could hide his yarmulke. And what does his chavrus in the kollel think about that? That the fact that he could go in and out, he has an open passport to go between the world of religion and laws, and laws to just restrict. There's no meaning in it. There's just eat this food and don't eat that food. What's the point of it? Just because, what if other people have the same exact diet? You're doing exactly what the goyim are doing? So what does this Chavrusa think? That the boy Avremi, who plays like he's frum, or the modern Orthodox that clearly identifies as modern Orthodox, the word modern already is there, as they would say, Manavshach, modern or Orthodox, or one of the Rosh Yeshivas of the Litvish Yeshiva said, Manavshach, Yeshiva University. So we think Yeshiva University is that the winning of the Hellenist Jews, right? They won. They combined Jewish tradition with education, philosophy, and science, and everything else, and gymnasium. And but the truth is that's not the case. This is the final point, and this is the punchline. This is the greatest hit that I have in my beatbox. The Nitzachon of the Greeks is Rabbinic Judaism that we have today, the classical one today, of no more animal sacrifices. The Greeks liked the Jews because we were a modernizing force. So the Gemara, the classical Gemara school system of Kushis, Abayis, and Alibed, and Yud Gimel, Shlosha Seikim, Rabbi Shmuel Doirish, and all this stuff, all that stuff is from the Greeks. We learned it from the Greeks, and that's a Greek implementation into Judaism, and that's what they wanted then. It's not like they're jumping up in their graves and they're happy that they won. It's that they came and they contributed what they had, and we took it. So it's not like you feel like your enemies won, and it's a Schadenfreude and this, and they won, and I'm going to say I'm a loser. But the Gemara system is one contribution the Greeks give to us. That means that Yehuda Maccabee is turning over in his grave when we sit and learn Gemara, instead of getting the clear directives from God through the priests. Priests tell you what God wants. They have a box, it's called the Urim V'Tumim, and they stick a note in this box, and this magical box gives answers from God. It's a radiohead from planet Earth to the Hebrew sky god of the universe. Sorry to combine a bunch of Christian theology and Jewish history into one box, because they obviously didn't believe in God being the universal God. They just thought that their God is stronger than the other gods. That's how henotheism works. Look up that. But I'm making a joke because today people have so much influence from modern theology that they forget how people actually thought and believed only a few generations ago. So Now you get the Gemara. Then you have, that's one, and then Yeshiva University is the next, and no more Karbonis. So the Jews in Egypt, Isis is a type of god, in Egyptian god, and it had a cow head. So outside the temple was a picture of their god. So because of the Jews, the Egyptians stopped giving Karbonis. So Jews were a modernizing force, and Isis no longer appeared like an image of the cow head outside the temples. So the Greeks saw the Jews as this modernizing force, similar to what Christians see the Jews as today, a modernizing force for religion, making it more about practice than about belief, because look what happened to the Christians with their belief system. It broke into pieces, and you have cults coming out of it. So it doesn't mean that Judaism can't have a cult. Wherever there are gullible humans, you could have a Rebbe, and he could tell you that he's a Navi, and he's a Mashiach, and this and that, and he could do it cryptically, and the more clever and the more finer he is, the more he could cook a better meal and make a huge following of different people who follow for different reasons. Some follow him as a prophet, some follow him as a wise man, some follow him as a beautiful guy with a big white beard that gives out magical dollars. But the vart is that wherever you have gullible people, science cannot make it impossible to be gullible and to believe. It could only make it possible not to be, and that's a great gift of science. But you have to accept the gift, and you have to go for it. You can't expect that it has a certain effect. The hammering blows of modernity has an effect even on the most zealous practitioners of any religion. In Yiddishkeit today, you see that even the most frum, like this Lev Tahor group, who are trying to go back to the old ways of Judaism, they never figured out that the old ways is to take a lamb and to offer it to God. And if you think that there's no temple, which is a Baba Maisa, there is a temple, you just have to rededicate it. Somebody made up a story that you're waiting for a third one to come down from the sky, so this way there should be no more zealots. And they got everybody to believe that. But that's another amazing history of how Chazal reformed Judaism and made it a very compatible practice today that you could bring into the house. And it's a nice religion. It's compatible with families and children. It's not militant, firebrand. It's not crazy. You don't have to chop up animals to get God to forgive you. So we made it that way, and even the most zealous practitioners tries to do tshuva, meaning he tries to become extreme and go crazy about it. He doesn't even start bringing in a sheep and a goat into shul on Yom Kippur, even symbolically, which means just bring the fucking goat. Everyone knows the Hebrew God is very particular how he wants his lamb chops done, and it's in Vayikra, it's very specific. And he never said that you do it until there's a war, and then you could stop. He never said that. Same thing with the Rebbe Rashab. He never wrote that Zionism is not okay, and if they win, then Zionism is okay, and the Melech HaMashiach could be a pro-Zionist, even in subtle terms, because he had to be subtle, because he had to be clever to get more followers. Anyway,